Good morning, Tracy. How are
Morning,
you?
James. I am great. I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. It's funny because I usually see you in person. This might be the first time we're talking on a video call. I'm
I
trying to
think
think.
you are exactly
Yeah.
right. We've maybe texted and I see you in person. That's right.
Yeah, that's right. I'm really excited to have you on today. Let me introduce you to our listeners real quick so we have a little bit of context. So, Tracey Scheffler is a serial entrepreneur. Can I say that? Serial entrepreneur?
You can. You can
Okay,
definitely
yeah.
say that.
So I'm really only going to list two of the things that you do, but there's a laundry list of things that you have done successfully. I will link your LinkedIn on the show notes so people can check out the whole story there. But Tracy is in strategic customer service operations. That's kind of your main bread and butter through your career. You're the CEO of a homework solution, which I want to hear a little bit more about how you are transforming contact centers. I am curious about that from a senior living perspective. And then number two, you're the CEO and founder of Parenting Our Parents, which is to provide resources for anybody who is caregiving or thinking about caregiving. I thought that was a really interesting descriptor, so I want to dig into that. But how we really know each other, Tracy, is that we were introduced by a mutual friend, Joanna LaFleur. Shout out to
That's
Joanna.
right.
And I want to hear you tell a story, of course, but we found each other through Joanna when you were looking at dementia care support options for your mom, and I'm sure we'll dig into a lot of that story today. But you are unique among my guest list in that you are technically a customer of ours, and you sure don't feel like it. I mean, I feel responsible to you, um, but you really feel like a collaborator. So. Tell us a little bit about how we got to meet.
Yeah. LinkedIn is one of, I think, the best connectors in the world, and
Yeah.
I always put myself out there to meet people. And I was a little over a year into caring for my mom,
Mm,
and I was a bit frustrated. And I was looking at who was out there on LinkedIn, found Joanna,
yeah.
sent her message, and she said, "You need to go talk to James. James does it better than anybody else in the industry." And I reached out to you, and you immediately offered to have breakfast with me. I think we spent 2 hours at the Hatch, and
Right.
from there, that's how we started our relationship. So
Yeah.
that's how we found each other.
Yeah. LinkedIn has been amazing. I've heard people say, hey James, you've got a pretty local business. They're in San Antonio. You post a lot about Bella Groves and other things you do, but does that ever amount to anything? And now I specifically point to you, Tracy, of Joanna's connection, and then you, and I really think that there's going to be a big future of content sharing and storytelling. You are getting really involved in that in telling your own caregiving story. Was that something you planned on doing?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I thought I'd be running customer service operations until I retired, and my golf game's not that strong, so I
Hmm.
always it kind of fell into it, I would say,
Yeah.
in the last 2.5 years.
Yeah. Well, we're going to dig into all of that in today's conversation. Backing up to how we know each other, I remember that 2 hour breakfast very well. And then we had several conversations after that. So I don't know why, Tracy, but I remember the physical locations where we sat and visited that were really impactful. Breakfast at the Hatch here in Bulverde. So we're shouting
Mhm.
out another local business. Love them.
Love the
Uh,
Hatch.
and then the second location I remember is sitting on the back porch of Bella Groves, and it was one of the meetings we had right before I think you had made a final decision to seek our support and have your mom move in with us. But the thing that I took away from our both of those meetings, Tracy, was how hungry you were to learn about the dementia process, not just caregiving, but like what was actually going on with your mom. And that's really a lot of what we do. What do you recall about our first couple of conversations?
I actually would start even before I met you, James, when I
Mhm.
went on your website, and
Yeah.
there was a prior display of people that are involved with their parents or whomever about
Mhm.
dementia, and you talked about it. So I really thought about, it's not just the moment you decide to put someone in memory care. It's kind of the process of what happens.
Yeah.
So I am so interested because I realized that mom, I have to be, not that I have to be different, but mom, every, month or so, or a few weeks, I notice a change, and I notice that I have to do something different, or I have to behave
Yeah.
a different way or interact a different way. And I don't always need to know what to expect, but I have this
Mhm.
hunger of what to expect. And
Yeah.
I think it's because of how my dad passed away. I didn't recognize a lot of the signs. Not that we think we're going to always have all the answers and be prepared, but I want to be better prepared to know how to make
Yeah.
her more comfortable and me. So I think that I'm hungry for that knowledge of
Mhm.
what's next.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something. It probably is a commonality of a lot of our family members at Bella Groves that they have a sincere curiosity because that it really is the service we provide. The way we talked about it, I think, was you have deep knowing of your mom, who she is as a person. We'll never know even a sliver of how much you know about your mom as a person. We know about dementia. We know about dementia care. We know that perspective. And we talked about it, it'll require both of those two things coming together for us to even have a shot at this, joyful experience that we hope she has. And I remember visiting with you, Tracy, and it was one, I felt like I was getting quizzed about dementia, which is an amazing thing. And you're like, well, what about this? And what about, tell me about this thing. And I remember thinking, oh my God, Tracy is like the ideal person for Bella Groves because the magic of what we do, it's 50-50. It's families and then it's us. Um, so we'll hopefully talk a little bit more about that experience. I really want to spend the bulk of our conversation giving you the floor to talk about how and why you came to the decision that you wanted to talk about your caregiving journey. And it's really funny for me, Tracy, because I didn't get a chance to watch some of your YouTube videos until recently. And you posted some really meaningful stories about considering making the move. I think you did a recording with Joanna, our friend Joanna, and then you've put out some other videos about what it's been like after the move, visiting your mom. So I can see that there's this story that is unfolding in real time of your experience. And really, my main question for you is why did you feel compelled to share your story online? And what does it mean to you to do that?
Um, Last night we were, and I'm going to do a little reality series, but I'm
Mm.
watching The Golden Bachelor with my
Yeah.
daughter and her girlfriend, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, she shared a lot," and it really keyed in for something for me. I'm like, sometimes we get to a point where sharing helps us either
Yeah.
grieve about the process or go through the process. And I felt, and I still feel very isolated and alone in this journey.
Mm.
And for some moments when I start sharing, my hope is that someone else doesn't have to go it alone, that they have some clues.
Yeah.
And it's happening now as I'm at my parents' home and going through
Mm.
things. And I recorded a couple things yesterday of clues that it, I didn't recognize. So I think I want to share, for one, it's a
Mm.
process for me to help me go through. And then, two is there's other people out there. I mean, 1 in 5, 1 in 6 people will have
Yeah.
dementia or be impacted by dementia. That's a lot of people,
Mhm.
it's a lot. It's over what, 20 million people eventually. So in the U.S. alone, we'll have a dementia impacting experience,
Yeah.
and and it's not a lot out there when I'm going through it. I'm digging and digging, and there's people that are, not people, but a lot of sites regurgitate, and I'm really looking for not the medical side of dementia, because I can get really wrapped up in that. I'm looking
Yeah.
for the caregiver and the change, the very harder, to me, they're the harder
Mm,
questions right now. We don't have science to point to all the time to know, oh, when A happens, B happens, and then C
right.
happens.
Right.
It's not always that clear cut, and sometimes you're a B and you go back to A. So I think James just, it's helping me, and through that, I believe I've found another purpose in my
Mhm.
second phase of life. I call it,
Yeah.
maybe not midlife
Yeah.
crisis, but second phase purpose.
Yeah. I can see that you are in part having a therapeutic, cathartic experience of telling your story in real time. And you're also, I can see the business mindset too. Going back to that serial entrepreneur mindset, which I identify with so much of. How do I live in the moment, observe things just as a participant of the story? But I can't help myself. I'm always filtering it through how do I tell this story on social media? How do I help, get this story to customers who aren't thinking about this? And I am thinking about I mean, in no way is this meant to sound cold. I think it's more of a practical thing of there's this really heartfelt thing that we want to create and we are creating together. And then there's the other side of it of how do we build a successful business? And really what we mean by that is how do we help a whole lot more people than the 32 people that are going to live with us?
James, you hit the nail on the head. Like, I'm sitting there taking care of my
Mm,
dad and thinking, how do I make this into a business that's helpful so that other
yeah.
people can get these services? And there's probably one other thing. I'm a potential third generation Alzheimer
Hmm.
person.
Hmm.
And I think part of the other reason I document or do this is I'm
Mm,
questioning, will this happen to me? My mom's mom, and it's kind of that little bit of do I want to know? Do I want not want to know? So I'm also struggling with
yeah.
how do I deal with it? But the business side, I think if I can help make people better or help not just people that are the caregivers, but people in the business of caregiving and
Yeah.
the people that are being cared for. And my brain just thinks that way. I'm sitting here organizing 44 years of memories, and
Mm.
I'm like, oh, I should tell people I've been organizing this way because it might help them think through that. And I can't, it's just my brain, it thinks that way. And so I
Yeah.
like capture it and share it.
Yeah, I totally get that and I understand it. It's we have this act of service and it's this thing that's very deeply personal, for us. And then I think it's just like anybody else, Tracy, it feels like we're just learning how to take our gifts and use that as a vehicle for this personal experience. And so, the word business sounds cold, but it's really more of it's a mechanism that happens to be our gift, and we might as well use it to kind of multiply the effects of this.
Yep. If sharing a story and coming up with ideas to help, and that is
Yeah,
business, then that's what I'm going to do for my life. So,
yeah, yeah. So let's dig in a little bit. And by the way, Tracy, share what you feel comfortable sharing. I preface that also knowing how much authenticity and courage you bring to your own videos that you're sharing. So I probably don't need to preface that, but I will. Um, let's talk about things that are meaningful for you, but things you feel prepared to talk about. There are a couple of segments. There was the time frame prior to making a decision to have your mom move in with us, and then there's been a time period after. Um, as we sit here today, what part of the journey do you feel most compelled to talk about and why?
mm, I'm gonna say the in between decision,
Mm,
of getting to the decision, James. Um, I'll say the decision and then after,
yeah.
because I think everything before that I was doing as a wisher, a thought of what my mom or my parents intended and how to live their life. And
Hmm.
those decisions were made in a vacuum, not intentionally as a hurt to me and my family,
Yeah.
but they didn't know any different. I
Hmm.
really spent a lot of time thinking about how my dad cared for his parents, how my grandparents were cared for, but um I think I'll eventually share both sides of it. But in
Yeah.
this moment, I'm capturing more of living through the making the decision, and it was hard because I felt like a failure. I felt like I was letting her
Hmm.
down, my dad down. Um, but through that whole process, I was losing myself and
Hmm.
my family in a mental way. Know they weren't going anywhere, but I just wasn't Tracy anymore as I was caring for her, and I couldn't enjoy her so
Hmm.
I think it's the after, James. I'll probably share it most with, just because I can capture it now.
Yeah.
And I think people are afraid to make the decision, and don't know when it's time. And I always said I knew when it was time, and it was crystal clear, when it was
Hmm.
time.
Yeah.
And so I'll share the in between and the after.
Yeah. We have an interesting opportunity, not just for this particular, podcast recording, Tracy, but just because of your natural motivation to tell your story and our um, need on the Bella Grove side to tell our story. I think we have a pretty unique opportunity to tell both sides of a relationship. And I have seen from this side of the fence, the provider side of the fence, of what it's like, working within senior living, specifically working within dementia care. One of the things that comes up over and over again is it's the subconscious but natural feeling of, there's the family on one side, and then there's the senior living provider on the other side, and there seems to be this natural tension, this push and pull between advocacy almost. And I couldn't quite articulate it before we really started with Bella Groves. But one of the things that we're trying to solve is that what we made crystal clear for us, for our organization, and for our team. We were just doing a new caregiver orientation this week, and I asked the four ladies that were in the room with us. I said, "Who do you think is our main customer at Bella Groves?" What do you think they said? They all had the same answer.
The residents.
Yeah, they did. I mean, automatically they were like, "Our resident, our resident, our resident," and I told them, "Actually, it's the family member." And they all sat there like, "Whoa, wait, why?" And they almost had trouble processing that, of like, "Whoa, wait, we're all here for our residents." And I said, "Yes, but," and then we explored the conversation, and we talked about. I actually gave a metaphor outside of senior care to help them, process this. I said, if you had a child that you were putting in childcare, or for some of the people, they weren't parents, so they talked about putting their pet in like pet care. And I said, what would it feel like if you went to, let's say, the doggy daycare, and that owner said, "Oh my gosh, your dog looks like it hasn't been eating very well. Well, we'll make sure we take care of that, and make sure that your dog gets a lot of play. How often do you walk your dog?" And it's this feeling, and you could see them kind of visibly get uncomfortable, like, "Oh my gosh." Um, and we talked about their business. The dog may be the subject of our love and our care, but really their existence as a business is to help you, the dog owner, to achieve all of your goals for your dog. Same with children, same with any time that you rely on somebody else to help support you. um the subject of our partnership, it doesn't diminish. Like in this particular case, your mom is the subject of our partnership. And we're very clear on that. But the other thing we're very clear about is Tracey Scheffler is our customer. And if we partner well with her, then we've got a shot at doing this well for her mom. Um, and it wasn't until Bella Groves that I felt like we could fully and authentically honor that relationship. And it's really heartbreaking for me to see the um, adversarial relationship that naturally kind of finds itself in senior living, where you've got family and provider on different sides. What are your thoughts on this? And you've probably got a lot of thoughts related to this.
I do. Me, I don't know if I'm unique in this, but when mom moved into Bella, my philosophy and core is the more people that love mom and can be with mom, the better I am, she is, and
Hmm.
and Bella's is, and you are. And I embrace, everybody that cares for her as well as I do, and I don't think I'm being replaced as a caregiver. I think some
Right.
people think
Right.
that when they move their parent in, that, oh, now I'm just either the, financial side, and I'm the one that
Hmm.
drops in and I provide things. I make sure she has, I don't know, whatever, clothes,
Hmm.
labels, whatever. And but that's not true. I'm still part of that care. And you had
Yeah.
mentioned that is we are a care plan together. So I
Hmm.
feel like we're in it together. Looking back on the first 6 months, I think there were things that I could have told Tracy to share
Hmm.
more, be involved more, do this. I try not to do the shoulda, coulda, wouldas and regret, but I take the shoulda, coulda, wouldas and make the
Hmm.
future, try to make it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Um, as a caregiver, walking this journey with my mother, you're facing your own mortality, though, James, every single day. And
Hmm.
it's something I was not prepared for whatsoever. And thinking through, you look at your mom and then you see yourself. You think, okay, is this my journey
Yeah.
eventually? How do I want that journey? How do I want my story to play out? And,
Yeah.
I go back to my parents making the choices. It's a process you can't not think about when you're caring for your parent, is you think, and then you look at your kids and then you're like,
Hmm.
okay, I don't want them to make whatever decision. I want to be in control of what happens, and where I go and who I be. I'm just fortunate that you were the intersection of where I lived, and where I was searching. But I
Hmm.
want to be more in control of that outcome in my future. But it's interesting you said that they said the residents, and I always think people want, they do the right, they come to work trying to be the greatest they are. They don't come to work and say they're going to be bad. And so
Yeah.
they really lead with their heart. And I love getting to know them, the people that care for mom as people too, because
Yeah.
I know how stressed I was. And at some point, sometimes, that's their job, but they also have a passion. And
Yeah.
um, so, I don't know, that's a little bit of a long answer, like I get to, but I
Yeah.
do feel that we, I do feel that I am the customer, because I'm also in my own preparation. It might be 30
Hmm.
years, but there's a lot, making decision for a lot of me. And then, think
Yeah.
about my husband and mom. So,
Mm.
and I also think I can help make her journey better when we work together.
Yeah.
Two brains are better than one, even if they add up to 1.1.
Yeah.
And so, I love that philosophy, James, because, it makes me more involved instead of just coming in. And I used to call these howdy calls when I used to do
Mm.
some staffing. I don't want to do just the howdy calls. I don't want to just come and say how you doing and leave to you
Yeah.
guys and mom. I want to be part of that journey.
Yeah. Yeah. It requires that we are thoughtful. So, putting the CEO hat back on here for a moment, thinking about how we establish and grow our business and our customer base through our storytelling, and that's our website, that's through networking, that's through Joanna. People understanding who we are about, and also being very specific about the type of customer that we think is going to really benefit from our philosophy. And a lot of times, I think families who are caregiving in dementia, you know, I would venture just there's no data on this. This is more, I guess, anecdotal from having been in the profession. I would venture to guess that the number one criteria, or the number one reason, maybe not criteria, the top reason that somebody chooses a dementia care location is proximity. That's it. It.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Um, I didn't go through that. Well, I guess you're right. At the end, I wouldn't say that was my
Hmm.
initial.
Yeah.
It was my elimination factor.
Hmm.
And when I was starting to look, one of the home health ladies that had been helping me started
Yeah.
gathering some information, and my husband and I went, and I was like, all right, we're going to just go out there and we're going to play golf, and I'm going to pretend this is the drive. So it was an hour away, and we went out there, and I think, I don't know, we were 15th tee, and I could see the facility, and I lost it. I'm like, oh my God, I can't drive two
Mm.
hours back and forth. And I had a meeting that next morning with two facilities in that area. And I just sat there and looked at them, and just tears. And I'm like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
Yeah.
I'm not ready. And so, I had some checklists of things, but, I
Mm.
just, prayed for a few minutes. I couldn't obviously skip that whole play
Yeah.
golf. But it was. I thought, why would I drive 2 hours, but 1 hour each
Yeah.
way? That's not helping me. That's not helping mom. And
Mhm.
all I could think of, oh, if I put her here, I can just hear her 30 years ago, in mom's loving
Mm.
voice. What the heck were you thinking, Tracy?
Yeah.
Why am I so far? Why am I here?
Yeah.
And why aren't you here? And so it was an elimination factor, was the location, James.
Yeah.
And I hadn't gone to breakfast with you at that point yet. So
Yeah. Yeah, the story, that you're sharing now, and the anecdotal information that I have, that ultimately proximity becomes one of the main reasons that a family ends up choosing a dementia care location. And the implication there behind all of that is they're all basically the same. I may as well have the convenience of getting to mom in 5 minutes versus an hour. And that is part of the problem. That is part of the the challenge, that you really can't distinguish one memory care community from another, other than like maybe how nice is the entrance, or things that don't really matter in the end for dementia care. And for us, we certainly do have people that this happen to be in proximity. They're 10, 15 minutes away, but we've had people that are an hour away. We've had people that are one of our family members, to great disappointment to her own family. She lives in Georgetown, like North Austin, and she chose Bella Groves, knowing that she would have a 2+ hour drive each way. And Tracy, I'm telling you, she was here as frequently as you are.
oh my
And
God.
um and that's not even the farthest. We've had people from farther away. We've had people from out of state that had you know um their loved one was kind of close to this area, so it was more of a convenience for their loved one that their environment didn't change all that much. But I think for me, I'm just reflecting on that people believe so deeply in the agreement that we're making. This is what we believe. This is what you believe, and we're gonna go for it. And for like that other family member who was driving 2+ hours, her family didn't love that decision, and I think in probably a lot of ways it caused a lot of challenge for them as siblings.
Mhm.
But she was the one who was here every week, every couple of days. And by the way, I used to know this, but how far away are you from Bella Groves?
I'm about 25 to 30 minutes, depending. Don't listen, police, if I'm speeding or not. And that is, and I love probably 90% of the time. I love the drive, James.
Yeah,
And I say I eliminated those places because of the drive. Now that you mention it, I probably would drive further for Bella if it was. I'm lucky I'm in, Fair Oaks Ranch. That's and you guys are in Bulverde, and it's a gorgeous drive for me. It
it's a
is.
nice drive. Yeah.
It's a and I have a hectic life, and it is 25, 30 minutes of peace.
Hmm. Yeah.
And my cell service goes in and out, so I try not to work. And so yeah, now
Yeah.
that you think about it, I didn't yeah, I would have driven further for Bella
Yeah.
because I know the moment I was going to pick you guys. I know exactly
I want to
what it
know.
was. Um, so my mother is horrible to wake up. Nobody wants wake up duty. Like nobody. And it's when my few times I went out of town while she was living with us,
Hmm.
I literally was like, do not wake her up before 11 o'clock.
Mm.
Like I would put a song on her Alexa device and it would wake her up. But the moment you said, oh, no, because I had this fear in my head that whoever, wherever she was going to be, that there was going to be this wake up call at 8 o'clock and
Oh, yeah.
round the troops up and everybody gets in the shower, get at the table by 9. I was like, the woman will either put someone in a straitjacket or they're going to put her in one. And when you told me that we don't do that and we, let things progress naturally, which is what I came to
Hmm.
figure out. I didn't have a name for it, but that was the moment I was like, yep, this is the place.
Yeah.
Not having to force her into that routine was so critical for me.
Hmm.
That was the moment.
Yeah, that's great. It's telling, it's emblematic of what we try to do at a bigger picture, which is you find the natural rhythm of somebody's day, and we schedule a lot of things around people's natural circadian rhythms, their wake and their sleep cycles. And if yours happens to start at 10 a.m. instead of 6 a.m., fine, that's when we start, and we go from there. So we're getting to practice a lot of our methodology, but because families like you, understand, agree with, and participate in that. There have been people who come and tour with us, and you can tell just by their list of questions, they want exactly the same thing for their loved ones as you do. They want a really good life for them and a good life for themselves. But their list of questions, it's like, okay, what time do you do breakfast? How often do and I can tell by the almost like the quantitative nature, the logistical nature of the questions. How often do you bathe them? How often do you shower them? How often do and I can tell by those questions how much we're gonna have to like reframe things for them that it's gonna be difficult. And they're gonna come with like their white glove and they're gonna, inspect things and I think that's also where some of that natural tension exists between customers and providers in senior living, is that when you don't understand that it is a collaboration between the two parties, and you say things like, "Hey, leave it to us, relax, you get to be the daughter again." That phrase I hate, and I don't say anymore. But I think that's why there's this natural tension. Um, is that families do feel like, hey, okay, that place has a regiment, and they're gonna go like, here's check, 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 check. Here's what we do, and daughter, you get to come visit, and have fun, but leave the caregiving to us. That is not the way that we do it. Obviously, you know that from being here with us. Um, and we have to have a small environment to be able to modify around people's day like that. Because we do have people that wake up at 5, 6 in the morning. They have their coffee. You probably know which residents are this way, but they'll have their coffee. They'll sit up at the front. They kind of station there, so when you're coming
Yeah.
to visit, you've got the two ladies that are saying hi to
Yes.
everybody. And then we've got your mom, we've got a few others who are like, they'll walk out of the room like at 10 in the morning, like their hair's, like just wake up hair. And, but the thing is, everybody gets it. Nobody comes in alarmed at like, hey, why is this person still in their pajamas at 10 in the morning? Well, because she wants to be, and
Yeah.
then we adjust right from there. So it really is a gift to us. I don't know if you know that, Tracy. I hope you do. It really is a gift to us that we get to practice what we practice because families like you understand, and it's this collaborative. I've got your back, you've got my back. We hold each other accountable, that's for sure. But there's this grace that is shared freely amongst all of us of like, hey, I get it. Like I've struggled with that, and I've got your back.
James, when you were talking about visiting different facilities,
Hmm.
and I probably go about it very different. And, I know you mentioned I'm from the customer service world, and in the customer service world, when we visit our contact centers,
Hmm.
there is there is a good way to do it, and then there is a real checkbox way to
Yeah.
do it. And the
Hmm.
good way to do it is I sit side by side with agents. I hold focus groups where I bring agents and
Right.
supervisors. Get on the floor and talk to supervisors. I really immerse myself in the process, and I walk through, and I don't want the guided tour with the checkbox. And there's some things in my head I want you to tell me that are important, but I didn't approach looking at facilities. Everybody sometimes wants to start with the price and this, that, and the other. And I didn't, I wanted to know you.
Yeah.
I wanted to walk in and watch. I mean, that's really what was important for me, is watching the interaction, the dynamics, seeing who was visiting. Um, I want to see it with my eyeballs because
Hmm.
that's the proof. I didn't have 900 questions there.
Yeah.
And I also think that those questions are, it was getting, it wasn't as important to me to hear
Yeah.
about, how many times does she bathe? I'd already lived that life. I know how many
Hmm.
times she's going to bathe and not. And I already lived the life of her putting her clothes on backwards and letting her wear her backward. How the heck she put her jeans on backwards is, I have no idea. To this day, I'm like, that's just
It's
really
an
amazing.
engineering feat. Yeah.
It's safe, yes, and I let her, and
Hmm.
um,
Go with the flow.
because yeah, I did go with the flow, and that was important to me. But it was important not to hear it; it was important to see it.
Yeah.
Because to me, the evidence is in
Mm.
the execution, and when I visited it it became, I was the daughter, but it was, I go into a little bit of business mode because
Hmm.
I'm like, all right, let's see how they execute before I ask a darn question. I'm like, I'm looking. And
Yeah.
you didn't know that about me too much, but
I
I'm
definitely didn't know
watching.
it in the beginning. Yeah.
Because that's, we put all our processes and our training on paper as business
Mm.
people, but it comes down to how well, we're complying and executing, and we're getting feedback. And
Yeah.
that's a different way to approach
Mm.
memory care. People are like, okay, what's, like you said, what's the schedule? How's the bathing? I'm like,
Hmm.
I want to know what's happening. Like when I'm asking you, it goes back
Yeah.
to like what you said. I'm like, mom's saying this now. That's new. Like I key in on that, and I'm like, and then I'm like, James, does that mean like we're at 8 months, 9 months, and I'm
Hmm.
10 months? And it's, outsiders might think that's morbid, but I want to know because I want to
Yeah.
prepare. I want to change my thinking if I need to.
Yeah.
But long answer to. That's what I was looking at when
Yeah.
when I first
Well, it's
visited.
it's it's great advice, Tracy, also to families who are going through this, and maybe, in your own storytelling of your experience, you'll, a lot of times we kind of realize, it's that hindsight wisdom that we have of like, oh, okay, now that I'm here on the other side, I can look back to 6 months ago, or, the first 30 days, and now I have some clearer wisdom. And a lot of things that the families report is, usually somewhere in the 3 to 6 month time frame is, okay, it all makes sense now. The things that we talked about before mom or dad moved in, okay, all of that is making sense now of what you meant by that, because we get to see it. Um, but it is great advice for family members that, as prepared as you can feel going into, visiting memory care communities, you can have a checklist of questions, but in the end, that isn't what really matters. I think being able to just sit and observe and watch, the caregivers, and in particular for me, this is the tip I give to families, is pay attention to the highest level leaders at the organization. If they're not available or offer to meet you, insist that you meet them. So that's the executive director. In our case, that's me, because we're a small family owned business. And I remember, one of the very first executive directors that I worked with when I was coming up in the industry, he was very smart, well respected, all of that, always wore a suit. And he had a lot of credibility and warmth and all of that. But if he came upon a resident who had had a accident, and was distressed and asking for help, and they had advanced dementia, he probably wouldn't know what to do. He would immediately call somebody to come assist. And that's something that I think you can trust and our families can trust is, I dress exactly like the caregivers when I go to work. And there isn't a single thing that could happen at Bella Groves that I personally couldn't take care of. And then coach other people how I did what I did. And I think that's really, for me, the principal difference in Bella Groves is that, we are a team of caregivers. From me to every single caregiver who's there, to AJ, our cook, and Gino, our kitchen manager. You're forming some special relationships with our food staff too, Tracy. But everybody there is trained in what we do, and by extension, families are too. And while I know we're unique, I know that not everybody's like this yet. I'm going to put that word in there. Yet, I hope more people, more organizations are like this. But if you're a family member listening to this and you're in the caregiving journey and you're considering a memory care partnership, insist that you meet with the highest level leader that's there day to day.
Absolutely. And I watch how, who comes out to talk to me, who
Mhm.
even to this day, I watch, how people interact, how, when you walk into a room, do you know the person's name? Do you
Mhm.
recognize that, there's a resident there? I'll just call her Anne, and
Mhm.
Anne often says, help me," and I watch if people walk by her. And I saw Kayla once, just holding Anne's hand, and
Yeah.
just kind of, just stroking her hand a bit. And those are things that, I just pick up by watching her. And so
Yeah.
when I walk by Anne now, and there might be, the caregivers might be very busy, there's no reason I can't hold Anne's hand for
Mm.
5 minutes and talk to Anne,
Yeah.
and I do that. And because I see her move her hands a lot, and I'm like, I think
Mm.
she's just frustrated and doesn't she's saying something bothers her. And I hear
Yeah.
Joanna say this, they don't sometimes, as dementia, folks don't know how to communicate that they're scared or hungry or
Right.
whatever. And what I get in return from Anne is more than I ever give her. I hear moments of
Mm.
clarity. I hear a smile. I get hugs. Anyways, so the learn and
Yeah.
know I watch of what you do. And I even think that in a business, if that executive's
Mhm.
too busy, I say this all the time to customer service executives: when's the last time you called your own phone number? And they're like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? I'm
Yeah.
like, is you care? I mean, you have 10 million calls going through your customer service operation,
Mm,
and you haven't yet experienced how crappy your phone system is or how wonderful it is. Like, have you been
yeah.
online and talked to, Joe, who's fantastic? And I always say an executive might not know how to solve everything, but if he doesn't know how to find someone or doesn't get involved in the solution, that's a
Mm,
problem. That's a problem
yeah.
to me. If they're so busy being the suit, and that's an old term, but then I don't really want to be involved in,
Yeah.
or I don't have any. You have no emotional attachment, therefore I'm going to have no emotional attachment as a
Right.
customer. Um,
Right.
so I get a little passionate.
But we should. It's a really great lesson in leadership too. I think we're bouncing back and forth. I think in a really really natural way, which is good. Part of the uniqueness of our relationship, Tracy, is that you are a business leader, and you're turning that gaze into aging services to make sense of your own experience, but then help others through it. And it's something that resonates deeply with me. Of I am first and foremost, I am a caregiver. I mean, the more that I was away from the front line, being in my corporate roles, I really felt like, what am I doing? I'm doing the mechanics of the business, but I'm not forming relationships with residents and their families and the staff. Like that really is where I think I thrive the most in direct care. And so by necessity, we can't be a 500 location community, business where the job would require that I am so far away that I couldn't do things like this. I wouldn't know you if I was a CEO of a 500, location place. But I think that's the beauty of, you get to create what you want to create. And Bella Grows is decidedly small business. And we'll see what happens if success follows, then it'll be like 10 years from now, we'll listen to this podcast episode and see if we stuck to our guns. But I think that's really great advice about, top leaders in a service-based business like senior care. If they don't have deep knowing of, maybe they don't all need to be great caregivers, but at the very least, they should care. Like you're saying, they should care um, about the experience of the customer, and who can do what, within your organizations. Um, but for me, I'll say, right or wrong, the minimum standard for an executive or a leader in dementia care services, if you don't know how to help somebody who is in distress, if you personally don't know how to do that, if you couldn't demonstrate it, you got to re-examine here, because everybody, top down, needs to know the methodology of what you're selling.
I couldn't agree with you more, James. And you really do a good job. And I would say I would challenge you. You might have a
Mm.
400, 500, resident organization, and you're going to find a way to know people, James. And I think the people that
Mm.
want to be known are in, you're a certain leader that appreciates the connection point. And as a leader myself, over the last few months, I've found a little bit too removed from
Mm.
coaching and mentoring some of the people, even on my own team. And
Yeah.
I've found this beautiful relationship with you and with so many people at Bella Groves that someone asked me the other day, what's the intersection of senior living and customer service? And there is one.
Mm.
And it's, it's a God-given world when I can find that moment. And I think I found it because I walk in every day. I'm like, okay, if I were doing this for customer service, if we could do this, this, and this, I could help the caregivers not have to do
Yeah.
that. And I think there is an intersection, James. I don't think we all have it fully worked out, but if I could bring my passion purpose into what I've been doing my whole life and they
Hmm.
intersect, um, I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
But I would say that the Bella experience back to your business model as a
Hmm.
business leader was the first important thing that I was attracted to. You had a process. It wasn't get the inquiry from,
Hmm.
my online inquiry, which we actually texted 5 months before we actually met.
That's
But
right.
the
You reminded me that we did. Yeah.
but the normal process is, text, inquiry, or email. Get the call from
Hmm.
the salesperson, get the 5,000 emails that ask me if I've made a decision, then give
Yeah.
me the highlights of
Mm.
how great it is, and here's the price and the commitment. I'm like, yuck, like,
Yeah.
throw up.
Sales process.
Yes, and I'm a
Yeah.
salesperson, I'm like, that is
Yeah.
the worst sales process ever. I mean, I'm like,
Mm.
stop with the, outreach in this, so that was the first thing, is process of how you went about it. I would, it attracted me, and that what information
Yeah.
I could find on the website that wasn't hidden. I'm like,
Hmm.
why are we hiding some of this? And I'm like, but it doesn't mean you're executing if you put it on your website. It just means you're
Yeah.
good at putting WordPress up, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
We see so many websites in this business that feel completely just mechanical, and they're all almost like, if you pull up most websites, just Google senior living near me and pull up the first three links, and I'll bet you that they are basically like a white with blue somewhere as the other complementary color, probably a big banner image of the location, so like the building itself, and then it'll probably swipe into some really nice stock photos of a caregiver, like with their arm around a senior, smiling, laughing on a bench somewhere. And then you go through it all, and then you read all of this generic copy about we provide exceptional care in a warm, home-like environment. So you've got that, and then you've got a call to action that says, chat with us today. You don't find pricing, you don't find family stories, you don't see photos of actual staff or residents, you don't get any of the like philosophy of why you are different from other places. You don't get any of that. It's just this very like medical real estate story. It's
It,
bland. All it is doing is getting you to a salesperson to try and talk to you,
yeah,
right?
it is. And I think the salespeople could be great. I think that they're probably set up
Oh,
horribly,
for
but
sure.
the website is such a sanitized, it's almost like a
Sanitized. Yeah.
marketplace of front end pushing of the living. But when I went into your site, so call me the cyber stalker or whatever, but I looked at the photos, and I
Yeah.
looked at what was in the photos, and it's funny the stories we remember. But there was a picture, James, of a TV in the background, and the
Hmm.
TV had my alma mater Clemson on it for a game. It
Oh,
must have been it was a national championship. I'm like,
yeah.
do you see this, Brian? They have Clemson on
That's
the
funny.
TV. This is the sign. But I knew it was a real picture because obviously I knew that was a game, and I knew the score and
Yeah.
everything. But I also looked at you, and then I take whoever the owner is, and then I go to LinkedIn. And I
Hmm.
do this for a ton of businesses. I go
Totally.
and see if you're a real person. I go and see who you are. I looked at your background. Then I got more
Yeah.
interested in your business background. I'm like, oh, this guy's really smart. I can tell him all my business ideas on top of
Hmm.
mom, and then we can, blah
Which you
blah blah.
did.
And which almost 2 hours, 15 minutes at the hatch later,
That's right.
I had cyber stalked you, James, and
I love it. It's the point, right? But it's good personal branding, it's good business processes, and it's one of the things I appreciate about our relationship together, Tracy, is that we've got such depth of we're care collaborators, and we both have this love and respect for your mom, and first and foremost, that's what we do. And then around all of that, I think what we're able to do is we catch all the nuance and intricacies that are bigger than that just customer relationship, and we're looking at the bigger picture of, okay, if we do something well, how can we expand it, how can we grow it, how can we help other people to achieve the same thing. And all of these things that we're talking about website and content and sharing your story, there's the practical logistical business side of it, there's the personal human emotional part of it, And what I respect and appreciate about you, and I think it's this kind of mirror respect that we hold for one another, is how do you do all of that authentically? Don't hide the fact that you're trying to lead, a business effort. Don't try to, sugarcoat, your philosophy or methodology. But how do you do it all in a really good way? And I feel like at the moment that Bella grows, despite all of the things that we share on LinkedIn and social media, I still kind of feel like we're a best kept secret. And I think that's actually a good thing that we get the truth and the fidelity of experimenting with, what we actually are all about. And we're learning a lot of things in working with families like you, Tracy, of um, how do we grow beyond. I know that we can create a memory care community, a dementia care community where people experience more joy than if they were not with us.
Mhm.
So that part I feel pretty confident in. The next part of it, the next evolution, is something that you alluded to, which is we don't call ourselves a memory care facility. Bella Grows is a dementia education organization. And what we want to do is help anybody who's affected by dementia. And it doesn't mean the person living with dementia only, right? And you alluded to that part of your journey, which there's a couple things you've shared in your videos I want to highlight that have really impacted me and I've started to think about it. One of them is what you just shared earlier, that you're thinking about this journey for yourself. And I think that's a big part that senior living misses, is that we are a solution when things have gotten really bad, and we'll make it better. So they're not thinking about, as we are thinking about, how do we help not just Tracy and her mom, but how do we support Tracy from here on out? I have Alzheimer's in my family. My wife has Alzheimer's in her family. There is a statistically, relevant chance that our children may deal with it at some point. So the things that we're learning at Bella Groves is very much also about our own lifestyle. So one perspective
Mhm.
is that it is as much about you and not just, the person that you're caring for. And the second part, I'll come back to it because I want you to respond to the first part. The second thing that you shared, I haven't shared it with you yet, that impacted me is you said in one of your videos, I thought that my burden was going to be lifted, that this weight was going to come off of my chest and I'd have peace of mind and, all of that. And it hasn't. And I was like, oh no. And at first, for me, I was like, oh no, what are we missing? And then I just sat and listened to your story and what you said, which I'd ask you to say again here and expand on. You said, the burden has just transformed. Like the caregiving responsibilities are still there. They've just transformed. We've got Bella Groves and other people who, I care about, and they're part of it now too. But it's not like a eureka moment of like, oh, whew, now that's done. The stress and the worry. What I hope we've done is at least remove worry. And what we hope to do for families is to be able to focus on what really matters. And it was really impactful for me. I've shared it with my whole leadership team at Bella Groves. That part of your clip that talks about choosing Bella Groves did not remove burden and this weight off of my chest. It just transformed it into something else. I was hoping you might be able to tell me more about that.
Yeah, I'll go backwards. I'll talk about the
Yeah.
burden ward. And when I drive home, I reflect a lot from Bella to my house. I reflect a lot
Hmm.
about the visit. Um, and when I had made the moment decision at, I don't know, 9 o'clock at night, that it was time that I was going to look for a place for mom, that focused on dementia. I had gone 390 nights or whatever putting my mother to bed. Every Sunday was a 2-hour shower. Every night I had made dinner. All that structure and routine was that part I got really exhausted with, because I'm also trying to
Hmm.
run a business. I have 4 children,
Yeah.
three are adults, but they're still my children. I have a husband and I have a teenager, and the
Hmm.
time that I was spending on with mom on those activities, I didn't have for not only myself but my family.
Yeah. Right.
That was huge. That was huge to replace that, like, that moment of being able to go to bed and not have to go and it became a, not Stairway to Heaven, it was a stairway to, sorrow and sadness, and walking mom up that stairway every night
Yeah.
over and over. That it wasn't, it may be a little anger, but I was like, I don't want to do this. Why? I'm not talking to mom. I'm not living with mom. And I almost started watching how when you're at the outside watching when people come in and I see this often, they just want to be busy. They feel like cleaning something or
Yeah.
moving something or going to get something. And I remember when my dad was sick, I was like, I'm just going to sit here. I don't really care about the dishes.
Mm.
I'm just going to ask him questions. And what it's done is transform the time I spend with mom into things that are really important. To me, I ask her questions and I have to trying to get really good at how to, bring stories out of her. But I still worry. The worry though is not that mom's safe. The worry is I
Yeah.
don't worry about safety, or I don't worry about her getting a shower anymore. I don't worry about her having to get her dressed. Those kind of things have changed.
Sure.
I don't worry about being her social director anymore because it's what's next, what's next, what's next. When I spent
Mm.
30 days in a row, couldn't watch another movie or find something
Right.
clever
Right.
enough to rewatch. And then lo and behold, mom, who knew mom was I'll have to tell you the Adam Sandler story of the day I drove mom to the
Oh my gosh.
that's a moment that you can't write that script.
Yeah.
But I still, mom's still alive. Mom is still breathing. Mom is still a human, and I still care for her. I still go see her. I still drive to
Mm.
see her. So I'm still a caregiver. Um, there's just, it's a change of how I care for her.
Yeah.
So I think that's, vocabulary is so critical these days, and I just pick the words sometimes that come to my mouth. But the
Yeah.
burden, it's shifted. It's more the drive and the planning and going to see her and
Sure.
activities. So I don't know, James, if we'll have time to hit on the Alzheimer's one in my family, because I'm like you. It's
Hmm.
my grandmother. I have a video coming out about mom and my grandma leaving the house and not coming back for hours. My grandma was missing for two
Well.
days. And my mom did the same thing. And her story ended in an accident in Mobile, Alabama, but I have a whole video on that.
Yeah.
But I worry, do I find out I have it or do I not? Do I care? Do I make, it's a whole philosophical debate that
Yeah.
becomes, something that probably is a little bit longer.
Mm.
But it's important.
Yeah, well, there are things that we'll talk about a lot through the course of our, knowing one another, and something you've always said, from the beginning. You might have said this at our breakfast meeting, but it said some. It was something to the effect of, we're gonna be good friends long after, we've done our job taking care of mom, and I think that's the beauty of what we've all agreed to. And Bella Groves is really just it's just the handshake. It's just a place where we get to um, coordinate all of that community. And that, I hope, is the bigger picture of what we're doing beyond the moment, beyond the next year, beyond the next couple of years. Is you live just on the other side in San Antonio, and I live here on this side. We're separated by like Highway 46, maybe. That's
That's it, baby. Yeah.
but otherwise, this is our community. These are our neighbors. These are our friends. These are the people we go to the grocery store with, football games with, and it's our own community. And I hope that when at the end of my life, when I'm hanging up my hat and looking back on maybe what my contribution was, I hope that this feeling that our families at Bella Groves and the team at Bella Groves know and is deepening every day. I hope that expands and it radiates out to the greater community of San Antonio, maybe the Hill Country here. But beyond that, I as long as I am the CEO of Bella Groves, we will not have a Bella Groves in Muncie or Los Angeles, or not that I don't think there should be. It's just that's not in my scope. I want to serve our community. I want to serve our neighbors, and I do hope that there's a way that we can serve those towns and cities elsewhere. But yeah, I think what we've got started here, Tracy, you and I and the other families, we have so many amazing families at Bella Groves, and we should mention them a little bit. But I'm so grateful you're a part of it, and I love what you shared about Anne in air quotes. Um, of course, we know exactly. When you, by the way, when you mention resident code names, um, every single one of us is like, oh, we know who that is, and but there's this love and respect, and in these families. I don't know if you caught this on. We just posted it on our Instagram, I think last night. But there was a resident in our second house who was with a family member that wasn't their own family member, and they were walking around Bella Groves, and I saw them, like they were at the doorway. The daughter, I can use the daughter's name, is Beth. So Beth was walking out. She had just spent a long afternoon visiting with her mom. They went on an outing together. She came back. She must have been tired, ready to go home. So she finished her hours long visit with her mom. Hopefully it was a good one. And she was on her way out, and she saw another resident who was by the doorway. She wasn't in distress, but you can just kind of tell when somebody wants to move, get out, be on the other side of that door. And I saw one of our staff members there, and I saw Beth kind of signal to the caregiver, like, "Hey, I can do that." And it was just this really cool moment. I was in my truck getting ready to go home, and I saw what was going on, so I just sat there and I was watching. And then I realized what was going on was that Beth and this resident were going to go for a walk. And I thought that was so beautiful, and I couldn't help myself. I took a photo because I wanted to send it to the team, and then I recorded a short little video. But this act of community and this village mindset that has permeated Bella Groves, I couldn't be more proud of it, because you just shared an example of it yourself. And they're not huge, extravagant moves, right? All it is it's a gentle touch. It's 5 minutes. It's, let me walk around the community with you. And I could have cried just sitting there watching this, and also knowing that resident's family, who's also here all the time, I've personally seen their interactions with Beth's mom. And it's just this kind of like, oh man, it's so beautiful. It's just this understanding of like, I've got you, family. When I'm here, you might have thought, we're here to support you with your care for your mom. Little did you know, you had more people that you were going to pick up, onto your plate and have to care about.
I didn't ex-
What do you?
I didn't expect that,
Yeah.
James, and it's a joy that is, you think it's just your mom, but the joy I have when I go there. And there was
Hmm.
another influencer talking about, I'm having a bad day, I'm going to go see mom. And she walks into a dementia facility, and she's like, if I feel bad, I go to over there. I get so much love and joy. I have
Mm.
established relationships with several, of the other residents, and I know that they know I'm Sue's daughter, and I know they
Hmm.
do. I know it's a reciprocal thing, and
Yeah.
there's just no way I can't. Sometimes I used to think, why do I sit in this room with mom? I'm like, let's go, mom. And we go hang out with, Mary. And I think we played
Yeah.
5 rounds of bingo the other day. And you want to have a good
Yeah.
time, you go play bingo with people with dementia. It's fantastic. And you just have the greatest time. But
Yeah.
some of the, there was a resident who lost their husband, and her name, I'm not going to say it obviously, but her name is my great grandmother's name. And I remember the
Mm.
day they moved in, I saw her, and I was like, um I'll use my grandma's name. I was like, okay, Myrtle. I was like, you're new.
Mhm.
And I can remember mom being angry or whatever. And then it started like, I'm like, hey, Myrtle. And she's,
Hmm.
and just the face and the hug. And, obviously not everybody wants to hug, but Myrtle does.
Yeah, she does.
And I love that. And there's a couple others that sometimes we just take a lap down the hall because we're going
Hmm.
to go somewhere. I don't know where we're going, but we're going.
Yeah.
And I love that. And, I didn't expect the deep love and joy I'd have with those other residents so much that when one moved out, I missed her. I
Hmm.
miss her. She was the
Yeah.
first resident that I met with before mom moved. When Myrtle's husband passed, I was
Hmm.
deeply saddened.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't not form these relationships. I'm old enough to know that you take love over not having it every day. But
Right.
it's such a beautiful thing. And I'll end on a fun note, James. I think it's my mother accumulates your napkins all the time, and you said those are your napkins, and why she has 8 napkins in a room, I don't know. But I
Yeah.
also think it's funny that the residents take each other's clothes. And I'm always like,
Yeah.
wow, that top looks really good, mom. I have no idea where I got that. And then I'll
Where did that come
see
from?
somebody else and people like, that doesn't bother you. I'm like, hell no. I was like, I think it's
Yeah.
fantastic. I was like, are they hurt? Are they bleeding? No, they're fine. They're smiling. They're laughing. See, they're
Yeah.
visible, and so for every kind of sad and emotional moment, I find so much fun in it too. And
Hmm.
those are things that I would, tell other caregivers as they do this journey is you
Yeah.
find the humor, find the joy, find the love, and it comes all together.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful note for us to kind of come to. We could have 10 of these
Yes.
conversations and yeah, hit a whole slew of topics. But it's a good thing to kind of crescendo on, and I think it honors our journey so far, and what we're about to continue, to embark on together. And so our catchphrase, we have a few actually,
Oh,
but there's one thing that's on our shirts. It's on our it's the thing that we kind of aspire to. It's unconditional joy. And I remember the backstory to that real quick is that once we knew we had the name Bella Groves, once we started thinking about our mission, and I love the memory of the bones of creating Bella Groves because now it's all come to fruition. Most of it's come to fruition already, and it's beautiful. And I remember thinking, okay, we got to come up with a tagline to go right under Bella Groves. And I was thinking about all the senior living organizations that I had been a part of. And, most places focus on care, they focus on safety, they focus on the thing that they do, the product or the service, that they provide. And I remember going through all of the brainstorming and I was like, okay, we got to keep it short. And I always knew that the ethos of Bella Groves was going to be about joy. And so I was talking to my business partners and throwing out some ideas, and it's like joy, joy. How do we talk about joy? And I was just you know talking. I wasn't even trying to come up with the tagline. I was just talking about what I believe about dementia care and in the journey of dementia is that it is such a life lesson. It's a microcosm of a life lesson where we are trying to find the blessing in the thing that we are cursing. Like how do we find not just a silver lining, but how do we how do we provide thanks for the thing that we don't want? And nobody wants dementia. Nobody wants for that to be a part of their lives. But how do we find how do we call it a gift? And there are this kind of touches on a lot of like storylines of faith and personal faith. But I deeply believe it. It's not just a catchphrase. I deeply believe it that no matter what happens, especially in through the dementia care journey, you can aspire to something like joy, not happiness, but joy. And and then that's where unconditional and joy just kind of it came together, and I knew it instantly. I was like, That's what we're going to be known for.
Mhm.
Um, I'm curious, as a customer, as a family member, somebody on the other side of that now, what are your impressions of unconditional joy?
Um, so I love it. No, I love the word joy. Again, I get it. It does cross into some of my own personal faith belief.
Hmm.
I am a huge believer in unconditional. Like, I don't do something to get something back, and to my own
Hmm.
detriment sometimes. But I'm not going to change. I'm going to give, give, give every day. I have met eh, eh, I couldn't. I always hate when I name a name and then I don't name anyone, but I'm gonna talk about Kayla, and
Hmm.
because I think she embodies unconditional as as a human being on this planet
Yeah.
more than most. The Kayla gives everything she's got with no expectations, and the genuineness in her of what she does, it embodies the unconditional. So I
Yeah.
know when you say that, James, it's not just Kayla, but Kayla deserves the recognition because of what she does every single day.
Yeah.
So I think you nail it on the head when you of who you hire. And I love AJ, and I can't wait
Hmm.
to see him when he's there, and we might not have
Hmm.
deep conversations, but we have a smile and we get a hug, and
100% of
I
the time.
know what he does for my mom every day. And that is, yeah, sure, it's his job, but he doesn't have to, he could not smile as much to me. He didn't have to always give me
Right.
a hug. He doesn't have to ask me always how I'm doing, but he does. And he does these things and gives that unconditional job, that unconditionally.
Yeah.
And the joy, and the joy that it comes is sometimes when I walk into the Bella, it's a feeling, it's an energy, and it's not just the people that are employed there, it's also
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
residents. So um I would say you are doing a great job
Mm.
as a leader. And when the tagline means what you want to achieve, and when you see examples of it or you feel it, it's sometimes you see it, sometimes you feel it. And I think I've seen and felt both
Yeah.
regularly. What we're doing now, James, is both of us are doing this because we give to each other, and I will feel joy the rest of the day because of this. So I love it.
I do too. There's so much we have ahead for us, and I'm grateful also, Tracy, that you are sharing your story, and telling your perspective. And I'm watching. I'm looking at those stories now too, and a lot of people on our team. And we always like, oh, she said something about, and so it's this kind of like feeling of being seen. But more than that, I want to tell you the thing that's encouraging, and I hope will encourage you, is that a lot of times we on the provider side of things, we don't really get to hear all of the personal perspectives of, for the most part, we hope we're doing a good job and all of that, but we don't usually get to the depth of the emotion in the experience of the family member on the other side. Like that thing that you said about, my burden hasn't gone, it's just transformed, it's changed into something else. I think that's stuff that people in my shoes need to know, and they don't have the gift of relationships with people to hear those stories. And so I think it's a real gift to me and our team as well to be able to hear your story. um, and for as long as we get to care for your mom together, I'm really especially grateful for that. And I'm shocked that we didn't tell any like damaging stories here. We have a lot to pick from. But your mom, I'll say this. I knew almost instantly when I met her at your kitchen table, visiting with her, and for the most part, I was there to kind of evaluate whether Bella Groves would be a good setting and a good fit for her. I knew pretty quickly. I was like, yes, okay, this is going to be a really great place for her, and the rest of it was really just getting depth to that yes. And then I remember going out into your back yard with you, and you're like, okay, so what do we think, and um, so we went through that whole process. But what I remember about your mom, and the reason that I thought she was gonna be okay here, and it's come to fruition, is that she naturally wants to m- entertain. She naturally wants to connect. She naturally, she has a sharp, dry sense of humor, a lot. But at the end of that is a desire for connection, not distance. And I saw that immediately within her, like the jokes that she was telling, and even the times when she's sharp, it's not out of anything other than I want you to feel like we've got an inside joke together, And so even though I didn't know her before, that was kind of her repartee, And I was like, okay, we're gonna be really good for her. That's not to say that we don't, encounter difficult times, and that, surely we'll come across some, sticky situations, as this disease process often, provides for us. But within all of that, coming back to unconditional joy, your mom, she is, I feel like despite, dementia, we still really get to know who she is. I still feel like I know the identity of your mom, and that it doesn't rely on memories. It doesn't rely on all of our cognitive function. She is who she is, and we get to experience that. Not as fully and in depth as you have your whole life, but um, I hope it's not lip service, that we feel a lot of gratitude that she's in our lives and that you are in our lives as well, Tracy. And I have faith that this conversation we're having, whatever comes to pass in terms of how we work together, we don't have to have the ultimate design for what the outcome is going to be. We just know it feels right. You choose your people, and then you get to work.
I love what you said. You choose your people, and I have chosen you all, and I think you've chosen
Mhm.
me. And you know, because of mom, my family and my joy and my circle has exponentially grown by, I don't
Mhm.
know, 20 people plus all the people I'm meeting in LinkedIn through you, James and Joanne. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just this ripple effect of life, because you guys, I think, feel the same way I do about embracing relationships and the ripple effect. I could have just stayed, in my little solo one-on-one with
Yeah.
mom, and you would have still embraced and loved that, because that is some people like that. But I choose to have the ripple of depth of of relationships. And my gosh, I'd have to. I was going to write a list of everybody I've met since I've met you, and it probably fills over 50 people plus,
Yeah.
and
Well,
that's that's pretty great in
yeah.
life.
Yeah. I mean, how do you not look at, just a moment ago we were talking about how do you find the gift in the thing that we think is so terrible? I think you do both. You recognize that something can be terrible, but look at all these gifts that have come from it, and then our job is just to pay that forward, right? And I feel like we're doing that, and we're just getting started. You are joining us for the think tank this
Yes, I
year,
am. I am
which is
so
amazing.
excited.
Yeah, so a lot of those people, that I am also just getting to know. I'd say maybe half of the people I've known in some context, and the other half I've gotten to know as they've been getting ready for Think Tank. And you are going to be there representing not just your own business and, the things that you have to independently contribute, but you're also there in part as a family caregiver to tell your story and to contribute to this think tank. So I'm really grateful that you're going to be there, and we get to know each other in a different capacity again.
I think it's going to be great. You know, there's so much work to be done, and there's so many people that we can service, and knowing what all those 50 people bring, you know, in their
Yeah.
talents, I can't wait to hear and help them all and interact with them because, yeah, that's another 50 people, James, that the ripple
I
keeps
know,
going. So
right? Well, one of them you already
I
knew. Joanna, have you met her in person before?
I have not. I didn't. I know. I've Carrie. I've met Carrie, Joanna. There's three other. I have to. Gosh, I can't remember. There's Nicole. I've met
Nicole? Yep.
nobody. They're like my virtual pen pals.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna meet a lot of them. So Joanna will be there. She's been there all 4 years, like from the very beginning. She's the only person actually, other than me, that's been everything tank. So I love her so much, and what she brings to the table is so authentic and genuine. She teaches me a lot. She credits me for helping her learn, but I really do learn about what it means to be vulnerable and courageous and just keep working at the
Yep.
thing. And she's so giving. So Joanna will be there, Nicole will be there, Carrie will be there, Adria Thompson. I don't know if you follow her
Yes.
yet. Yeah, so she'll be there, and Natalie Edmonds. So Dr. Natalie, who runs Care Blazers, she will be part of Think Tank as
Oh,
well.
that's
So
huge.
we've got
That's huge. All
yeah.
all of those are huge.
So
I can't, you know, some people I follow and some people I actually talk to and have had meetings with. So you know, I always say we're not competing. There's so much business. I mean, in a you know, there's
mm,
so many people to service. So I always say everybody does a little bit different piece of this journey.
yeah,
So and we all together can really make it, you know, together we're stronger. It's cliche, but it's true.
yeah. Well, we'll keep doing that. Thank you so much, Tracy, for making
You are
this
welcome,
time
James.
to basically just record a conversation we would have had
Yeah, that's
anyway, which
right.
is beautiful. So for our listeners here on Level Up, I hope whether you're listening to this episode from the lens of a business person in senior living or a family caregiver, or if you think you might become a caregiver, reach out to us, reach out to Tracy. I will include her websites and her LinkedIn in the show notes for this episode. Tracy, I enjoyed our conversation. Get home to San Antonio safely.
You're
I'll see
welcome,
you soon.
James. See ya.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Level Up Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to the podcast and its YouTube channel. Better yet, share it with someone you know who is on their own leadership development journey. I hope you'll be back for the next episode of Level Up. But until then, I hope that you are leading well, and remember that you are living your legacy today. So, make it a good one.